If you've been following along with me in this chapter, you should be feeling comfortable now drawing some simple shapes as well as more advanced shapes like we did in the previous lesson. But just to let you know, there's a collection of shapes called the perfect shapes that will give you a nice head start. These are shapes you could draw manually yourself, taking a lot of time and effort, or you can get a nice head start by accessing these perfect shapes, and there's several categories of them. That's what we're going to look at in this lesson, and we need a new blank page to do that. So if you've been following along, we're on page 2. That's where we left off. We're going to add a new page by clicking the plus sign after page 2 of 2. And we want to flip that on its side. We'll do that momentarily. Let's go to our pick tool. If you've jumped to this lesson, you'll need a new drawing page. So you can go up to your new button. And then all of us can come over to our property bar here and click the landscape button to turn our page on its side. So whether you have 1 or 3 pages or 2, it really doesn't matter. As long as we got a blank page turned on its side here in landscape, we're ready now to start drawing some of our perfect shapes. We access those from our toolbox. Over here, you can see a grouping of shapes called basic shapes. And when I click and hold this button down, sure enough, basic shapes is at the top, but there's other categories. There's arrow shapes, flow charting symbols in here, banners, and callouts as well. So let's go through these. We'll start with our basic shapes. And when I click on it, you can see it's attached to my mouse pointer. What am I about to draw? Well, that's actually up on your property bar. If you look up here, you can see that this is a perfect shape. Looks like a parallelogram. If I click the drop down, sure enough, you can see there's a bunch of different shapes to choose from here. I'm going to go to this one here, the isosceles triangle. And I'm going to click and drag, and you can see I get this right angle triangle. If I hold down my control key, I get the isosceles triangle. So it's up to you. Just draw the triangle, let go, and you've drawn your triangle. So again, we could have used the polygon tool, chosen 3 sides, but it's already in here. Some of these other ones would be very hard to draw. For example, let's go over to the no sign here. Click and drag, holding down control to keep that perfectly round down below. And now that would have taken some effort combining shapes together to create the no sign. Notice also that there's one little red node showing up in there. And as I move over it, you can see my mouse pointer changes from the crosshair to the black arrow. That means I can edit that node, known as a glyph, and that's useful for creating thinness or thickness of the actual shape. So in this case, I'm going to go out to the right here a little bit and let go, and you can see I've made the thin line appear here all the way around my shape. If I drag that the other direction in towards the center, I get a much thicker line. And speaking of lines, on the property bar you can choose different line styles. If you don't like a solid line, you can go to dots and dashes. I'm going to try this one down here, dashes. It's very hard to see zoomed out like this, but it's definitely got those dashes in there. And if we create some thickness by going to the drop down here, I'm going to go to 1.5 millimeters. There's the idea right there. Kind of cool. Let's try one more of these basic shapes. I'm going to click the drop down and go to my happy face. I'm going to come down to the bottom right corner, hold down control as I click and drag. I'm going to change that thickness from the property bar. I'm going to try 2.0. And I'm going to go over here for fun to my color palette and click on yellow. And fill that up with yellow. There is one glyph in here, and as I move to it and see that black arrow appear, I can adjust the smile to be more or less if I wanted to. But I'm going to go down a little bit to make it more of a smile. And now I'm going to go up to my pick tool here, click off of it to see the end result. We'll come back to that later. Let's go back to our toolbox though. There's some other categories in here, like arrow shapes. I'm going to click on arrow shapes. Check it out up here. There's the default. If I click the drop down, arrows pointing in different directions. See that one's pointing down. So if I wanted to click and drag, I've got an arrow pointing down using the default line style and width. I'm going to bump that up to 2.0. And I'm going to use the glyph here to either make the arrow tail skinnier or wider until I get the shape I'm after. Click the pick tool, click off of it to see the end result. And of course I could fill that up by clicking on it. I'm going to go up here to black on my color palette to fill it up and click off to see the end result. Very nice. There are some other arrows to choose from too. We'll go back to our toolbox here in the perfect shapes. And you can see there's some 4-sided arrows, chevron type arrows. We've got some with trails in behind. So lots of different options for creating arrows. Things that you would probably have to spend a little bit too much time and effort on trying to draw yourself manually. So it's nice to have them here in a collection. Let's go back to our toolbox, hold this down, and go to the flowcharting shapes. In here, if you're going to be drawing any diagrams that require the flowcharting shapes, you've got them all listed here. I'm going to start with this one right up here at the top. And I'm going to click and drag to draw that shape. I might want to fill that in with some text. We'll be doing that later on. I'm going to add another one. So let's just switch this up now to maybe this shape right here. Click and drag. And add one more just for kicks. I'm going to go down to this right here and click over here to the right. Okay, typically when you're doing flowcharting, you need to connect these. So we're going to talk about a tool now that's part of the line tools we're going to discuss in the next lesson, but let's get a head start here. Over here where it says freehand in your toolbox, this is the fourth button down. Click and hold that. You'll notice that there's a number of line tools here, and the one I want to select is actually near the bottom. It's called the connector tool. And this allows me to go to shapes, and when I find a node, see as I move along the edge here, it says edge, but eventually I'll see node. I can now click and drag down to the next shape, and when I go along the edge, as soon as I find a node, I can let go, and it will stay connected. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Right now I'm going to go over to this right side when I see a node, click and drag over to a node here. Now I need to find a node, and there's one right there. I'll let go, and now these shapes are connected as well. And all that means is if I go to my pick tool and I move these around, I'm going to click and drag this one down. It stays connected. I'm going to drag this guy down as well. It always stays connected, and that's the beauty of the connector tool. It'll maintain all of your connections no matter where you move things around on your page. All right, I'm going to marquee select these with my pick tool. I'm going to click and drag to make sure I encompass all of those flowcharting shapes. When I let go, they're all selected, so when I hit my delete key on the keyboard, they're all gone. Gives me a little bit of space now because I'm going to go to the next category here of my perfect shapes. I'm going to hold this down and go down to the banners. Now think about drawing flyers or advertisements. You've got different banners to choose from the property bar. This banner's going down, up. You got this wavy one, starbursts. Let's start with this second one here. I'm going to click and drag across. You can see I've got a nice little banner. I do have a node for adjusting the actual width of the banner itself, and I can adjust the ribbons on the end as well using the yellow node. There we go. It's a little more 3D, and now I just enter my text on the inside. Let's try a different one though. I'm going to go up here to my property bar and choose this starburst right here. And I'm going to click and drag right underneath. I could see that on a sale blowout flyer, and we might want to put something like 20% in there. First though, with it selected, I'm going to choose yellow, make that nice and bright. I'm going to go over to my text tool. Let's have some fun here. Just click anywhere on your page and type in 20%. There we go. I'm going to go back to my pick tool now. I'm going to go to the bottom right corner and just make that much bigger. It can even be bigger than the burst itself. Go to the center, click and drag it over, and when I release, you can see that blowout there on a flyer. I can imagine that. And of course, we can always make adjustments, make it a little wider, make it a little taller. It's totally up to you by using those sizing handles. There we go. So I think you've got the idea. Lots of banners to choose from. Now we've also got, from our perfect shapes, some callouts. Callouts are useful if you're doing cartoons, for example, or you've got photos where you want to show people talking or thinking. And if I come up to my property bar, you can see I've got some for displaying speech. There's a thought bubble. I can even be a little more technical with some of these technical callout shapes. So I'm going to start with my middle one here at the top, and I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to go to my little node here because this is where I can adjust where it's coming from. If I wanted to come right from down here, I'm going to go right up to there, make the little adjustment, and then here's where I would type my text, just like I did with the 20%. I'm going to delete that though and try a thought bubble instead. So let's go down here and click on the thought bubble. Click and drag down. You can see that the direction you drag is very important. If I click and drag from the top down, well, the thought's going in the wrong direction. So I'm going to go this way, Go to the X in the middle and just move it down. I'm going to click on my text tool. I'm going to type 2, hit enter. Easy. Exclamation mark. Over to my pick tool, I'm going to size that up a little bit. Go to the center with the 4-sided arrow, move it inside, and deselect to see the end result. So lots of different shapes under the Perfect Shapes collection found right there on the toolbox. Lots of categories. Hold it down, select the category you're after. Remember, the property bar is very important, not just for selecting the shape, but the line style and thickness for those shapes as well. Speaking of lines, in the next lesson, we're going to start drawing actual lines and curves and look at some of the options you have when drawing lines and curves in CorelDRAW X4.